Hi Brian,
Hi Carl.
thanks for coming along this afternoon and agreeing to do this podcast with me.
You're welcome.
So just for the purpose of our listeners,
Yeah.
just explain what these podcasts are about. These podcasts are for you to give us your experiences about your Part 3 test. So your Part 3 test experience, you passed today.
I did, thank you.
This morning.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
And that was done in Bury St Edmunds, is that right?
Yes, it was. Yeah.
Fantastic. Great result.
Yeah.
Well done. I was there at the end. Well done.
Thank you.
Well deserved by you. So how did you find the whole training process from beginning to end then, Brian? Just quickly.
I think the training process, I think for me, I struggled with it initially. I didn't understand the process initially, and I think that takes experience. And I think the 12 months it's taken to do has been quite a steep learning curve coming from a different kind of background. And I found, possibly by failing my first two, that, and then reading maybe later on, I found that once I've now read the information in the books that I've got, that all of a sudden they made sense where they didn't make sense before, and now coming up to my final Part 3, having read them properly, it made everything kind of slot into place.
So what resources did you look at? What books are you on?
So I've got the Route 51,
Yeah.
and I found reading through that in the last couple of months, that made massive sense. I've also got the blue one, which is the
driving instructors
one.
Yeah, the client-centred.
Yeah, which again I read through when I first started from kind of end to end, and initially really didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I've noticed in the last couple of weeks that actually looking at it, it made a massive amount of sense. More than I thought it would do, to be fair.
And is that because you're when you done your 40 hours, you went on to a trainee license?
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah. Do you think that's because being on a trainee license made you understand those resources, those books better? Without those books, do you think you would have been able to do it if you weren't on a trainee license?
I think the trainee license helped. What I would say is the one thing you can't do is it's knowledge of roads. You need to be like a taxi driver, or you need to have that knowledge of where you are. I would say the most important thing I struggled with was understanding lesson planning to start off with. And it's taken me a good 12 months, I think, to know the areas that I'm working inside out and back to front, so I know what I'm doing and where I can take people. So I found that the most difficult thing, I think.
Okay, so thanks for that. Let's just talk a little bit about your preparation for your Part 3 then. So how did you prepare for your Part 3?
I found, obviously, I came up to yourself and had some training sessions there, and working for the right type of training sessions. So things that I needed to help me, and we discussed that and what the best way to move forward was. So I found that massively helpful. I also went out with some other instructors, some other ADIs to see how they teach their pupils, and looked at different ways that I thought would benefit me as an instructor. Some were more useful than others, but I cherry picked information from all of them, to be fair, and I think that helped as well.
Yeah, and as you said, you had a couple of attempts before this occasion, and did you take anything away from those two attempts that helped you towards today's attempt?
What I took away is you need to prepare. Preparation is everything. Having the right pupil is an odd conversation, but you do need the right pupil. You need one that you can communicate with. You need to be aware of your route, so understand that you know what you're going to be doing is really important, where you're going to be going, but do not plan ahead. Don't think past each junction. Work on the junction you're working on, and then move forward. And I found that a much better way to do things.
Yeah, because we had this conversation, I think, in your training, and you said this to me, and just to clarify that for our listeners, what we're talking about here is being adaptable, aren't we?
Yeah.
Rather than goal focused, because I know that's something that catches a lot of people out on their part 3 and their standards checks. They go with a goal or their pupil's goal, and they don't deviate where they need to be. But as we've said, you know, it's about dealing with the information that's going on inside the car and outside the car at that moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And making those adaptations. And listening to your feedback when you came back today, I sensed you worked very hard today. Shout out to Monica, your pupil. Thank you, Monica. But, you know, did you feel like you worked for it today?
Yeah, I'd done planning. I suppose we had a lesson yesterday with my pupil, so we knew what's going on, but I really concentrated, worked on exactly what you see. So that see it, say it, sort it is massively important, but also to be massively aware of what's going on around you, because things change really quickly and you have to deal with those. But yeah, it's definitely working. Don't go out there with a plan, or go with a plan, but don't go with a fixed plan in your mind of where and what you're going to be doing, because it changes really quickly. I think we had an area, and again, because we know the area, that worked, and finding areas to pull up so you know that you've got preset areas within your route is really useful. But don't feel scared to pull over and have a chat and clarify what you're doing.
That's quite an important part, because I think there's a misconception, and I know sometimes this might vary from area to area. It's really important what you said about pulling up and having a chat, because I think people feel that because of the COVID restrictions, and there was always this need to keep the wheels rolling. I'd just like to make it sort of clarify, if I can, with our listeners, Brian. How many times did you pull up today?
We pulled up 3 times today.
And at any point did the examiner tell you that she didn't want you pulling up?
No, we did. To be fair, from the minute we left the test area or the test centre to the minute I got back, I heard one conversation from her, or message from her, which was, I think we need to make our way back now, Brian. Because I forgot about the time. But apart from that, my pupil didn't even realise, and I'd forgot the examiner was in the back.
You were having too much of a good time, weren't you?
I was concentrating on the pupil, and I didn't clock her at all. I didn't notice. I wasn't. I'm not interested in what's going on in that seat. All I'm interested in is what's going on with my pupil, which is really important.
Absolutely. And on that note as well, a really important thing to stress, from the feedback that I've had recently from somebody who passed their standards check, different examiner to what you've had today, but they were 10 minutes or so over the finish time, but the examiner did actually thank them for the lesson and say that the 10 minutes didn't matter, because there was a need that to address. So there was something happened that the instructor dealt with before going back to the test centre, and the examiner was very thankful for that. Because that's what you wanted to see.
Yeah.
It wasn't about the time, it was about the pupil, just like you were saying. So I'd just like to clarify that bit as well, for those listening that might be coming up for theirs. Excellent. So what lesson did you choose today?
So
or what did Monica need today?
So we had a lesson yesterday, and we discussed observations, awareness and planning at roundabouts. We then broke down today on the way to the test exactly what she needed, not what I needed. And we discussed that it was about making progress at roundabout. So when you're coming up to a roundabout, not stopping at every junction. So we came up with a plan to do that. And then I discussed that plan with the examiner. But Monica also used information from our previous lessons of what we'd discussed and how we'd gone through a process. And then we also clarified that as we were going around on the part 3. So we knew at the start what the goal was or what she wanted to learn, and then we clarified that throughout the actual test, and then anything that we needed to change or modify we done while we were out on the test.
And how often, or if at all, did the plan change?
The plan changed 3 or 4 times, and you deal with each time as something completely individual, and then deal with that situation, and then possibly go back to the original plan. But I found that we could do what we were trying to do not only with roundabouts but with junctions. So we dealt with each individual section and then moved on, and then if we decided to go a different way, then we would go a different way. We didn't stick to an exact route.
Okay. So again, just as we said before about being adaptable,
Yeah.
Not being goal focused with the route that you had potentially in mind.
Yeah.
Again, there's so many variables, isn't there? As we know, no 2 days are the same. That route could change overnight and could be closed because of roadworks or whatever. But yeah, great. So how much experience did your pupil have? Just so that our listeners kind of gauge an idea of the type of experience.
So she had 20 hours with the previous examiner, with the previous instructor, who made her cry, as she put it, which put her anxiety up, which is why she changed instructors. She had about 10 hours with me before we done this, and she felt much more relaxed, as she told the examiner throughout the experience. You've got to have, I believe, for that pupil to feel comfortable with you, because if you're not, I don't understand why you would want to make a pupil feel uncomfortable when you're teaching them. And I felt that she feels that she's happy for me to be her instructor still, because we don't shout or raise our voice at them, which if people are paying, I don't understand why you do that. But obviously I don't know the previous instructor, so I don't know the ins and outs of that conversation, but she felt comfortable enough to share that with me. But yeah, about 30 hours.
So I would say trained then, rather than partly trained.
Yeah, she is trained, but her anxiety kicks in.
Yeah.
Quite badly sometimes, but we manage that and deal with that on a lesson to lesson basis.
Yeah, now you got some really good feedback from your examiner with regards to your rapport.
Yeah.
And I've heard your lessons with her as well, so I know actually you have got a very good rapport with Monica, and I've heard her say that actually the same compliments that you just said about, that you're not this shouty kind of instructor. So no, well done. So would you have done anything different in the test?
No.
After all that?
No. I suppose, if we're being... No, I don't think I would. I think I'd done the best I could do on the day. I felt relaxed going into it. Whatever you do, don't stress yourself out leading up to it. Just treat it as a normal lesson.
Yeah.
Which is massively important. I did slip up on 1 or 2 things. And in hindsight, I would have done those differently. But I kept her safe. And that's what it's all about.
Fantastic, yeah. So just to wrap up then, Brian, is there any advice that you can give any listener who's preparing for their part 3 or standards check indeed, who might have some concerns going towards the test? Any advice?
Keep it simple. Be prepared for anything. Everybody says see it, say it, sort it. Definitely do that. Definitely understand where you are and your surroundings. Plan for pulling up areas. but just keep your pupils safe. Don't feel afraid to talk to them. Don't feel afraid to clarify things. Yeah, just go with the flow and do what you do best, and you'll be fine. Don't wind yourself up. The biggest problem you can do is wind yourself up. Just forget the examiner's there. They don't know you. They don't remember you. It's just on that day a snapshot of what you see. I can talk from experience with that. And be yourself. That's all you can be.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think I've heard examiners say exactly that. I wish driving instructors would just be themselves. I've heard them say, and just come into it and do what they normally do, and and just relax into it. So yeah, great. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And thanks very much for giving me this interview today, Brian.
You're welcome.